Good afternoon, and welcome to the quarterly board meeting of the Tennessee Board of Regents. I want to begin by thanking Vol State Community College, or Volunteer State Community College, I should say, give it its full name, for hosting us today. I think we've been in just about every building on this campus. We've been spread out in several meetings, and we are very grateful to you for taking us in today. We just had a lovely lunch. We got to see the new humanities building. The campus looks great. So thank you, Dr. Faulkner and team. We know this is not an easy task. I want to remind our board members to when you speak, I'll need you to press your microphone and watch for the little green light. Just as a reminder. And do we have somebody on the phone, Sandra, calling in? Tom White? All right, thank you. All right, so we have two regents calling in. I think I hear Tom. Excellent. Could you guys maybe mute your phones? We're getting just a little feedback here, a little scratchy. Thank you. So we are in the holiday season. We're in the season of our legislative events here with the Board of Regents. We are in a season of December commencements. There is a great deal going on, and we have a very robust agenda this afternoon. And I want to be efficient in our time and effective in our time, and certainly give time for any discussion, but keep us moving as well. If the Chancellor does not have any announcements at this time, I will ask our Secretary, Mary Moody, to please call the roll.
Regent Apple.
Here.
Regent Autry.
Here.
Regent Duckett. Here. Regent Green. Regent Griscom. Regent Hatch.
Here.
Regent Krause.
Here.
Regent Markham.
Here.
Regent McQueen. Regent Mitchell.
Here.
Regent Prescott.
Here.
Regent Reynolds.
Here.
Regent Shockey. Regent Summons.
Here.
Regent Templeton.
Here.
Regent Varlin.
Here.
Regent White.
Here by phone.
So is Regent Green on the phone also? Okay. Well, you have a quorum.
All right. Thank you, Mary. Thank you very much. You have before you our minutes from our September 22nd, our regular quarterly board meeting, and the special called meeting we held on October 23rd. Those, of course, were in your reading materials prior to the meeting. Does anyone have any changes or corrections to those minutes? If not, we can take these together, and I would appreciate a motion to accept the minutes. Thank you, Regent Prescott. A second. Thank you, Regent Templeton. Any discussion? We simply need a voice vote on this. All in favor of approving our minutes, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you very much. Chancellor, your interim action report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Last week, you received an interim action report in your board materials. This report constitutes a record of business transacted by the Office of the Chancellor since the previous quarterly meeting of the board. Madam Chair, pending any questions, I recommend the board's approval of the report of interim action.
Any questions for the Chancellor on the interim action report? If not, we need a motion to approve.
So moved.
So moved. Thank you, Regent Apple. A second. Regent Duckett. Any further discussion? If not, once again, signify your approval by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you very much. We now turn to our committee reports, and we have before us the minutes from our Audit Committee meeting of November 21. We will entertain a motion to accept those minutes, assuming there are no changes or corrections. A motion to approve the audit. Thank you, Regent Duckett. A second? Second. Thank you, Regent Prescott. Any further comments? If not, this does require a roll call vote. Mary, once again, please.
Regent Apple.
Aye.
Regent Autry.
Aye.
Regent Duckett.
Aye.
Regent Green. Regent Griscom. Regent Hatch.
Aye.
Regent Markham.
Aye.
Regent Mitchell.
Aye.
Regent Prescott.
Aye.
Regent Reynolds. Aye. Regent Templeton.
Aye.
Regent Varlin. Regent White.
Aye.
The motion carries unanimously.
Thank you very much. November 21, our ad hoc committee on committees met. We will need approval of those minutes as well, assuming there are no changes or corrections, and we'll entertain a motion to accept the minutes. Thank you, Regent Hatch. A second? Regent Markham, thank you. Any discussion? If not, a voice vote is in order. All in favor of approving the ad hoc committee on committee minutes, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you very much. Earlier today, the Economic Community and Development Committee met. Regent Apple, please give us your report, and I believe we may have minutes to approve there as well.
You do. You have before you the minutes from this morning's informational meeting, and it included an overview of the TN Trained Certification Program, the warranty program, and an update on activities from the ECD leadership team. Does anyone have any changes? Call for a motion to accept the minutes.
So moved.
Second. Thank you. All in favor, voice. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have approved the minutes of, I think I transposed this, the Economic Development Committee meeting this morning. So thank you, Regent Apple. That was a good session. Regent Markham, we would like to call on you now for our Regents Award on Excellence in Philanthropy.
Thank you, Vice Chairman. Today, the Tennessee Board of Regents is proud to recognize Security Bank as the recipient of the 2017 Regents Award for Excellence in Philanthropy, nominated by Dyersburg State Community College. This award is a unique designation. It is given only to the most honored and devoted philanthropists for their support of the important work of our institutions throughout the Tennessee Board of Regents system. Since Dyersburg State began formal fundraising in 1985, Security Bank and its employees have been incredibly generous, energetic volunteers, and tireless advocates of the amazing work done on behalf of the students at Dyersburg State. Security Bank has a strong record of benevolence, providing scholarships for needy students and contributing almost $660,000 to Dyersburg State Community College, making it the 5th largest donor in the college history. Security Bank's gifts have come to Dyersburg State Community College at times of maximum impact. Dyersburg State Community College was fortunate to receive a $329,000 endowment challenge grant under the Title III of Higher Education grant in 1994. The grant required that Dyersburg State Community College provide a 50% match, totaling about $165,000. Security Bank provided a large portion of that match so that the college could receive the grant funding. This provided a 10% gain in total endowment funds. In 2002, Security Bank came to Dyersburg State Community College rescue once again with a critical gift to renovate the former Dyersburg Country Club property for Dyersburg State Community College use. That facility has been an irreplaceable asset numerous times during the college's housing of temporary offices during renovations of other buildings. Dyersburg State Community College Continuing Education Division, Liberal Arts Facility, and the bookstore, the Upward Bound program, and several others. In addition to financial contributions, Security Bank has supported Dyersburg State in other ways. Security Bank employees have chaired the annual fund campaign for the past 4 years. Security Bank has provided 17 annual fund volunteers for various campaigns, with 12 of those volunteers serving more than 1 year. 3 incorporators of the Dyersburg State Community College Foundation were Security Bank employees, and 2 of the 5 Dyersburg State Community College Foundation chairs have come from the Security Bank family. Each year, a business in Dyersburg community sponsors a German exchange student. For the past 5 years, Security Bank has employed the exchange student while he or she attended classes at Dyersburg State. This type of financial commitment isn't reflected in its total giving. Security Bank directors, executive staff, and officers have been unfailing advocates of Dyersburg State for more than 3 decades. They have done so at critical times when Dyersburg State was not certain if key projects could continue. The Tennessee Board of Regents system is proud to acknowledge the Excellence in Philanthropy Regents Award to Security Bank. Their leadership, support, and involvement with Dyersburg State Community College has earned them the distinguished privilege to be recognized with this highest honor. I would like to ask Dyersburg State Community College President Karen Boyers to step forward to the podium for additional comments. Let's get your mic on.
Okay, there we go. Sorry. Anyway, Regent Markham, Madam Chair, and members of the board, pleasure, and Chancellor Tidings to receive or to recognize Security Bank, and I know they were so grateful. The whole Security Bank family, I think, were there on the 15th of June when the Chancellor and Regent Prescott were able to join us, and Regent Prescott presented the award. So it was a wonderful evening in Dyersburg. But this is a locally owned bank, independent community bank that's just been terrific to the college. And I guess one asset we didn't mention was their duck blinds. You know, every now and then they'll let us use it for a special visitor to Dyersburg State. So that's just almost, they haven't loaned us any of their children yet, but almost all their assets. So they continue to help us, and we're very, very grateful for that. And these kinds of awards really make a difference. So I thank the board and all the regents for making it available. So thank you very much.
Thank you, President Bauer. Vice Chair Reynolds, that concludes my report.
Thank you. Well done as always. And President Boyer, take our thanks back once again to Security Bank. Well done. So thank you. About a year ago now, thanks to Governor Haslam's leadership, we had the distinct pleasure to appoint a new chancellor to the Board of Regents system. Probably the best holiday gift the board gave itself in naming Flora Tidings as chancellor. She started work on February 1. It has been a busy year. It has been a whirlwind, but she has had 2 singular focuses: student success and workforce development. And she is amazing in each and every way. So with that, I will thank you on behalf of the board for the last 11 months and many more months and years to come, and turn the podium over to you for our report of the Chancellor.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. No, the gift was to me. Was definitely the gift to me. I do want to give you a little bit of an update on some of the items that we have going on. To start with the Motlow State Search and the Nashville State Search, I'd like to let you know that the 17-member search committee chaired by Regent Tom Griscom, with our other board members representing Regent Emily Reynolds, Joey Hatch, and Yolanda Green, serving on these searches. The first meeting, the orientation, was October 24th. Our prospect and review meeting was November 20th. Committee in Greenwood Asher conducting interviews on the 12th and the 13th of December, with our reference feedback meeting scheduled for January the 29th. The Nashville State Community College Search has a 20-member search committee chaired by Regent Joey Hatch. He is doing double duty on this search. Other board members include double duty Regent Emily Reynolds, Greg Duckett, Fran Markham, and Mike Krause. So again, we're most appreciative to our board members for serving on these searches. November 21st was the prospect and review meeting. December 4th and 5th were the committee and Greenwood Asher conducting interviews of the candidates that were selected, with January 29th being our reference feedback. We again are looking for appointments to be made to these positions by July 1st. The candidates that we interviewed were excellent. We had extremely high caliber individuals that applied for the job. For both of the colleges, we had well over 60 applications and narrowed that down to interview 12 in one search and 14 in the other. So extremely excited about looking forward to the outcome of our searches. I'd also like to talk a little bit about earlier today, President Anthony Wise and President Dwight Murphy signed an articulation agreement which will articulate Tennessee College of Applied Technology Knoxville hours into a Pellissippi State Community College Associate Degree Program. TCAT Knoxville and Pellissippi State have identified 7 programs to articulate: Computer Information Technology, Network Concentration, Engineering Technology, Civil Engineering Concentration, Engineering Technology, Industrial Maintenance Concentration, Engineering Technology, Manufacturing Concentration, Electrical Engineering Technology, Mechanical Engineering Technology, and Welding. The hours will range anywhere from 6 up to 24 hours toward an associate degree in the identified programs. Also, earlier in the week, TCAT Knoxville and Pellissippi State faculty and staff have worked to identify course by course as well as prior learning assessment to determine qualifying hours. The 2 colleges are also aligning transfer hours for special industry students to assure those trained at TCAT Knoxville are aware of their transferable hours into Pellissippi State program. TCAT Knoxville and Pellissippi State are committed to this working relationship because it is being demanded by our industry partners throughout the region. On Monday, December the 11th, President James King and President Jerry Young signed an articulation agreement which will provide the Tennessee College of Applied Technology, Morristown, students the opportunity to earn an Associate of Applied Science degree in Aviation Technology through Northeast State Community College. TCAT Morristown students who have successfully completed the Aviation Maintenance Technology program and have earned a Federal Aviation Administration Airframe and Power Plant license are eligible to apply for the Northeast State Community College Associate of Applied Science degree in Aviation Technology. The following employers have hired graduates from the Aviation Maintenance Technology program to work as licensed airframe and power plant mechanics: Cyrus Air, Elizabethton Airport, Endeavor Airlines, ExpressJet, McGee Tyson Aviation, Pinnacle Air, and Twin City Aviation. With the students completing the program each year, the Aviation Maintenance program at TCAT Morristown maintains a licensure pass rate of 95%, with 100% of those students obtaining jobs as mechanics in their field of study. Would those 4 presidents please stand and be recognized by their colleagues in this board for the great work they've done? They are true testaments to sharing their services with each other, to moving our students forward to workforce and economic development and student success. So thank you to all of you for what you're doing in that area. I'd also like to announce some retirements that we've had, many of which I think you are all most aware of. Dr. George Van Allen announced his retirement to be effective December 31st. In his stead, I have appointed Vice Chancellor Kim McCormick as interim president of Nashville State effective January 1. Donna Hastings, president of TCAT New Bern, has also announced her intent to retire effective December 31st. And I have appointed President Yolanda Jones as interim president of New Bern effective January 1st, 2018. Dr. Lynn Kreider has announced his intent to retire on February 28, 2018, and I have appointed Vice Chancellor Carol Purrier as interim president of TCAT Murfreesboro effective March 1st. I'm also very pleased to report to you that TBR underwent its periodic evaluation or sunset review hearing as is required of all state agencies, departments, and boards under the Tennessee Governmental Entity Review Act. The State Comptroller's Office conducts the review. We received a draft of the performance audit report a couple of weeks ago and the final report this week. And I'm very glad to inform you that TBR received a clean bill of health from the review with 0 findings. There were findings with the Tennessee Foreign Language Institute, which is administratively attached to TBR through a memorandum of understanding, but not managerially related to TBR. The Legislators' Government Operations Subcommittee had a hearing on the report on Tuesday afternoon in which I participated along with Mike Krause, the Executive Director of THEC, and most of the questions focused on the Institute answering questions with regard to TFLI. We did receive 4 years, which is the maximum amount that can be granted, so we will not go through sunset review again until 4 years from now. So congratulations to all who worked on that, and to us as TBR, we get to exist 4 more years. This morning, many of you participated in the TBI training. The TBI did hold an active shooter training session for our presidents and other staff that wish to attend this morning. Our plans are to take this vital information and create a system-wide plan on how we can best deal with all emergencies that arise. And last night, we were able to participate in another very important aspect of our system, and that was the Maxine Smith Fellows Program. This class includes members from the community colleges, TCATs, and our LGI universities. We're looking forward to the fellows joining us at the June board meeting near the conclusion of their class. Madam Chair, that concludes my report.
Any questions or comments for Chancellor Tidings? Good report. There's lots going on. And speaking of lots going on, our resident Energizer Bunny, also known as the Executive Director of the Tennessee Higher Education Commission, Mike Krause, is with us today. Of course, he is a regent, and importantly, he is here to bring us an update on the implementation of the Focus Act. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. I appreciate it. Before we dive into this, I would echo your comments about Chancellor Tidings. I would just say this: I've been in and out of state government for almost 12 years. I've never seen ever THEC and TBR working how we do together now. For those of the regions that don't know, we actually do joint staff meetings with TBR senior staff and THEC senior staff. We have one coming up in early January. I attribute a lot of that to Flora and her communication style. We just talk all the time about everything. And actually that relates to this presentation, because a lot of negotiating this massive governance shift that the Focus Act brought is about parties communicating. So we just feel so honored to really be in the partnership we're in with TBR. I'll ask Dr. Lauren Collier to walk us through some of the in-depth details, but let me say on the front end, first, it's hard to know what was prevented looking back, if that makes sense. So when things unfold well, it's hard to comprehend how things could have unfolded in a different way. And transitioning governance systems in higher education is fraught with peril, and I've seen many states do it poorly. I would submit to you that Tennessee is doing it well. And the Focus Act, when it was passed a few years ago, everyone focused on those 6 universities getting a local board, and that was important, obviously. I actually, and you all know at the time I was in the governor's office as a proponent of the bill, but what I've seen is the real benefit of Focus has actually been, in my eyes, to this board, and to the leadership of the Board of Regents, and to the presidents and the audience. Because while those 6 universities are now independently governed at a local level, and that's great, I think it's equally, if not more important, that we have a state board focused on community and technical education, and economic development, and workforce development. So losing sight of that vision, I think, sometimes a hazard, because everyone's focused on these 6 new boards. Well, this existing board that's been here since 1972, I think, has a really refined mission that we're seeing unfold. So let me talk about a couple things. First, if you look in retrospect at what's unfolded over the last year, it's pretty seismic. So the focus boards didn't exist. They had not been confirmed by the General Assembly this time last year. Last spring, 48 focus board members were confirmed for the locally governed institutions kind of all at once, and then were seated. If you think about your roles as the fiduciaries of the Tennessee Board of Regents, that was pretty massive to get that done for 6 boards. 48 people confirmed at once. One of THEC's central beliefs about this transition and about making sure that we're preventing calamity and governance change is training board members well. Now, the precursor to that is you need really high quality board members. I will say, those 6 locally governed boards, if you've had a chance to scan their roster, they've got astronauts. Now, I'll kind of just stop there. When you get an astronaut, kind of sums it up. They're very high quality boards. So I think we met that kind of precondition on the front end. So we needed to train them well. We took the THEC team on the road. We went to all 6 campuses in about a 3-week period, and we brought AGB with us, and many of you are familiar with AGB and their very deep expertise. And we sat in a room with these trustees and explained what being a trustee means and what it does not mean. Most of these trustees were I think they walked in with a great frame of reference. But there's no doubt we went in depth on things like funding formula, capital process, compliance, that sort of thing. Coming out of that orientation and first board meeting, you all saw that next evolution, which was, for the first time in Tennessee history, getting every governing board together, including this board, and the UT board, and the THEC board, and those 6 boards. And that was our Higher Education Summit on August 18th, which we intend to be, I think, about a biannual thing, Lauren, right? So if you're putting yourself in one of those LGI board member shoes, the next big thing that needed to happen is SAC COC needed to approve your new governance structure. That has now occurred, and it happened on December 5th. So I think we're at a place as 2017 closes in the focus transition where the front end things have happened, and a lot of the hazards we think we've managed to avoid. I'll highlight a few of those hazards at the end. I think we should be very clear-eyed about them. But so far, the transition has gone really well. I want to give credit for a lot of that transition going smoothly. First, we tried to figure out the really big buckets we need to focus on and be relentless about hitting those points over and over again. The first is getting boards seated to understand what it means to have a fiduciary duty to your institution, and that's bucket 1. The second is talking through disentangling those institutions from this board, and that's something we really are going to dive deep with you on here in a moment, particularly around capital project management and then also data systems. When you think about what's ahead for this year, looking back at what's already happened, these transitions, I think, are what we really need to be focused on over the course of the next year. And so I'll ask Lauren to come up and do a little bit of a deep dive on what that looks like.
Thank you. Let me start by saying how nice it is to be at Vol State. For those of you who don't know, this was my first Tennessee home, so it feels like home. As we were training the locally governed institution boards, we laid out for them what we thought of as the lanes of responsibility, differentiating the governing board responsibilities, which include you, the systems, from the coordinating responsibilities of THEC. And so that's what you see in front of you here. Much of THEC's work is at the high level. It's master plan. It's our relentless focus on the drive to 55. It's that high level, and then it's operating between and among the institutions, so coordination and communication. The Focus Act was explicit in enhancing a few responsibilities. One of those was reviewing mission statements annually, and an increased focus, at least for the LGIs, on reviewing and approving new academic programs because they would no longer go through the TBR review process. Another of those, setting binding tuition rates. So where those previously had been recommendations from THEC, those are now binding. There were a few places where the legislature said, we want to make sure we don't want to lose ground. Those are with maintaining our data sources, making sure that that is consistent, certainly to drive the funding formula, but also to make our decisions. What have we done this past year? Well, we've taken sort of I think of it as if there's an organizational equivalent to Maslow's hierarchy. We start with the foundation, which is meeting statutory requirements. And then we've moved through reviewing all of the policies and processes that exist at THEC to see how they need to adapt, or if we need new things in the new landscape. And then finally taking a step back to that high level and saying, okay, do we need to revisit this? Are there questions we need to ask now? So at our May commission meeting, the first step in approving mission statements, those mission profiles for all universities and community colleges were affirmed. And like I said, that will happen on an annual basis moving forward. Also at that May meeting, our commission approved a 0 to 4% binding tuition range. The effect of that was that the university average for tuition and mandatory fees came in about 2.64%. Your community college and TCAT range averaged about 2.5%, so everybody kind of fell close to the middle of that. Back into this time last year, we began convening a capital policies working group whose task was, you've probably heard Dr. Deet and others talk about this, the mammoth task of now prioritizing capital projects from 2 systems and 6 independent universities, and doing that in a way that was fair and equitable. That group devised an entirely new proposal process that was implemented this fall, and early estimates are that it went well. All of the LGIs and the system seem to support that list that has been proposed to the governor. So that's a big step 1 for that. And then finally, in the government relations realm, we had the first cleanup bill. You are certainly aware of that last year. Most of that falls into the category of giving the LGIs some of the same authorities and also exemptions that the systems have. So notably in that was for campus police and audit processes. So looking back at this list, of particular interest to you, you'll see a number of items that are highlighted with asterisks. These are the processes, capital project management, procurement, and data, that there was an awareness that those require a more intentional process for the institutions, the LGIs, to understand what capacities they need, and for TBR to help us work through what that transition. I'd like to thank, as we talk about procurement, Associate Vice Chancellor Angela Flynn has been invaluable for us. She helped us identify what pieces, what responsibilities, what reporting requirements were necessary for these locally governed institutions, and then has helped us review them as they go through the process. In truth, procurement is a bit more straightforward for these institutions. They have been managing a number of contracts already. But the big change comes in the reporting, especially the fiscal review process. To be candid, the capital project management piece is a whole different beast. As many of your staff were well aware, and as we have all become aware, this list is a little bit deceptive, because just to simply say detailed responsibilities does not give you the insight that there's an entire matrix of those responsibilities, everything from determining when a designer is needed to actually managing the construction process. For that reason, that process is pretty intensive. There are a number of trainings being coordinated through THEC with your support, the support of Dick Tracy and his team moving forward. So that process is ongoing. At this point, we do have 2 institutions, Austin Peay State University and East Tennessee State University, who have moved through the transition and were approved for independent management of capital projects as of December 1st. Similarly, both Austin Peay and ETSU, as well as Tennessee Tech, have been approved to operate their procurement independently. So I will sort of end a little bit with some observations. I am maybe one of the few people who travels around the state and goes to all of the board meetings. And so some initial impressions, if you will. First, there is intense scrutiny and awareness, which is maybe not surprising given the board members, on finances and risk assessment. Already, a number have moved into new, more corporate models of enterprise risk assessment. So that awareness, I think, is really opening up some transparency, and it is really standing the institutions well. Next, we're beginning to see some creative ideas around tuition policies. At this point, most of those are in pilot, or they're running tuition models around extending or waiving out-of-state tuition. In some cases, they're looking at bundling online courses at a reduced fee. Again, some innovative things beginning to be explored there. And finally, we're seeing a proliferation of new academic programs. In truth, some of those were in the pipeline, but were sort of held off until the new boards were stood up. Some of these are very new, and they are simply at the notification phase, so they will still go through the entire external review process. But there are some new avenues opening up there as well. So finally, with next steps, coming back to that big picture, given all the changes, Tennessee Promise, moving into Tennessee Reconnect, Focus, we're stepping back and saying, do we have the financial pieces in place to achieve Drive to 55? What data? Are there new elements that we need to consider to even track our own progress? So those are two pieces that we are picking up. None of this is happening in a vacuum. We have ongoing communications, some of it all of it, there's both regular and continuous, I guess. The Finance and Data Council, the CFOs are convening tomorrow, again, reviewing policies, reviewing things moving into the next year already. Similarly, chief academic officers will meet in February, early February, to review all of these policies and to begin moving into some real decision making.
Let me just add a couple things here. First, the Regents staff in particular have been very helpful during the capital transition, and we'll continue to lean on them. There will be pieces of this transition that will probably continue to be a little bit arduous. I guess I would emphasize to the board, it happens once. We've got a transitory period we've got to get through as I liken it to television wires behind the TV. It takes a while to untangle them. We're probably halfway there. I think that we should also anticipate things are going to come up perhaps that are really complex. That's where the communication comes in. I also think one of the virtues of this has been that CFO meeting that Lauren mentioned. That's all the CFOs. So that's community college CFOs, LGI CFOs, and UT CFOs. That wasn't happening before. We were often thinking of ourselves in terms of two systems. So again, when you think about the value proposition of Focus, we think it lives very strongly right here at the Board of Regents. Certainly for those universities, maybe being able to follow their own individual directions. And then finally, making sure that we've got a communications pathway that spans higher ed regardless of governance structure. So with that, would take any questions you might have.
Questions for Mike and Lauren?
Great. Thank you
Good
very much.
update. Thank you both. Chancellor, any further comments?
I would just like to again thank Director Krause for the working relationship that our leadership teams have. This has brought a dimension to the planning and the processing of what we're doing that I don't think we would have without that. So thank you for your cooperation on that.
No, as with anything, communication's a two-way street. And Mike, you lead a great team, so we're honored to have you with us. Thank you. We appreciate you.
And we know they're great because the Board of Regents often hires them.
Yes, we do. Better keep an eye out. Where is Russ? And we are proud to have him on our team. There he is. Oh, I love it. Well done. Thank you so much. We have 2 items of unfinished business before us today. The first, we've approved the minutes from the ad hoc committee on committees meeting, which of course consisted of our bylaw review. And consistent with our TBR policy, you now have the revisions to those bylaws before you. Mary, do you want to just give us a quick overview of what we're voting on today, please?
Okay, so you have received in your packets and previously the red line and clean versions of the proposed revisions to the bylaws. And these are part of adapting to life post-focus. And so we have looked at our policies and our bylaws and begun those changes necessary due to the Focus Act. And so the changes that are before you today are to remove unnecessary repetition of statutes and to streamline procedures and to produce a set of bylaws that are reflect best practices for similar governing boards. If anybody has any questions about the proposed changes, I'd be happy to answer those.
I know everybody's read these. We've had a couple of bites at this apple, so to speak. So if there are no further comments or questions, this one requires a roll call vote.
I need a motion to recommend approval in a second.
We've got a motion from Regent Prescott and a second from Regent Duckett.
Regent Apple,
Aye.
Regent Autry,
Aye.
Regent Duckett,
Aye.
Regent Griscom, oh, I'm sorry, Regent Hatch,
Aye.
Regent Markham,
Aye.
Regent Mitchell,
Aye.
Regent Prescott,
Aye.
Regent Reynolds, Regent Templeton,
Aye.
Regent Varlin,
Aye.
Regent White.
Aye.
Has Regent Green joined the call? Didn't want to overlook her. Thank you. The motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. Mary, thank you for your work on this, and thanks to all the board for a careful review and read to make sure we get this right going forward. So much appreciated. Mary, I will come back to you. We have some revisions to the proposed rules on immunization, and I'll let you take this one once again.
So at the September meeting, you approved revisions to, not revisions, but new rules that were allowed by a new statute to set immunization standards for students in the TBR system. You approved them, and then the process requires that they go to the Office of the Attorney General for approval. When they got to the Office of the Attorney General, they thought they were fine as far as they went, but they suggested that we add exemptions for based on religious or medical reasons for students who either for religious reasons or for medical reasons could not have the immunizations that were required in certain areas. And so we have revised the rules to reflect those exemptions recommended by the Attorney General's office and would request that you approve the revisions. And this does require a roll call. Rules by law require a roll call vote.
Once again, any other questions for Mary on this
Oh,
item?
and we're going to have
Yeah.
to vote twice. We have an emergency rule that goes into effect immediately and a permanent rule that will replace it once the GovOps committee considers our rules.
So what do you want to take
First, we're going to take up the emergency rule.
Okay, so I need a motion and a second to approve the emergency rule. Thank you, Regent Duckett. Thank you, Regent Prescott. With that, Mary, please call the roll.
Regent Apple,
Aye.
Regent Autry,
Aye.
Regent Duckett,
Aye.
Regent Hatch,
Aye.
Regent Markham,
Aye.
Regent Mitchell,
Aye.
Regent Prescott,
Aye.
Regent Reynolds,
Aye.
Regent Templeton,
Aye.
Regent Varlin,
Aye.
Regent White.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries unanimously. And now for the permanent rules. The rules are exactly the same in wording. It's just a matter of process under the UAPA.
So a motion to approve the permanent rules. Thank you, Regent Markham. Second, Regent Apple. There's no further discussion. Mary, once again, let's call the roll.
Regent Apple,
Aye.
Regent Autry,
Aye.
Regent Duckett,
Aye.
Regent Hatch,
Aye.
Regent Markham,
Aye.
Regent Mitchell,
Aye.
Regent Prescott, Regent Reynolds,
Aye.
Regent Templeton,
Aye.
Regent Varlin,
Aye.
Regent White.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you very much. We turn now to new business, and we have 3 informational items to be presented to the board this afternoon. And I will first call on our Vice Chancellor of Finance, Danny Gibbs.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. Today, I will be sharing with you 2 pieces of financial information. The first being the system-wide annual financial report, and the second being a report on the financial performance of the community college and TCAT sectors. Neither report will require any formal action on your behalf today. Included in your mail-out materials, you should have received a copy of the fiscal year 2016-17 annual financial report for the Tennessee Board of Regents system. The report includes the consolidated financial information for the 6 locally governed institutions, 13 community colleges, 27 TCATs, and the system office. Additionally, the report also presents financial information for the reporting entities' foundations as well. Again, please keep in mind that the annual financial report is an informational item only and requires no action. Before I move on to the next item, I would be remiss, I think, if I did not recognize all of the very hard work that goes on across the state in our college's business offices to ensure that the financial report is prepared accurately and prepared timely. Having worked myself in a college business office and prepared financial statements, I think I've got a special appreciation for all of the work and hours that are necessary across our system to do what they do. And now that I have the privilege to be at the board office, I've also been able to see firsthand the hard work and dedication that is required of Renee Stewart and her staff. They are tasked with reviewing and consolidating the financial reports from the 46 reporting entities and preparing the document that's before you today, and they all do an excellent job. So a big thank you to them as well. Now moving on, I'd like to share some consolidated sector information regarding the institutional financial performance. TBR policy 4010002, institutional financial performance review, requires that on an annual basis, the board shall be advised of the aggregate overall financial performance of the system's institutions. To aid in this assessment of financial performance, we use various financial ratios that are widely used and accepted in the college and university environment. And I will briefly describe these ratios as we review the information. And as we go through these, I do want you to keep in mind, though, that these ratios are just indicators of financial health. They are certainly not absolutes. The first one that we will review today is the primary reserve ratio measure. And it measures the financial strength by comparing the expendable net assets that are available to our institutions to the total expenses of the institution and provides information on how long an institution basically can survive on its current reserves or savings. The industry standard is 0.40, which represents about 5 months worth of expenses. The watch level is 0.13, which represents less than a month and a half of expenses. And as you'll see from the community college sector, that they meet the expected level of performance, which means that the reserves for the sector as a whole are in pretty good shape. The next item that we'll look at is the return on total net assets ratio. And this ratio provides information on whether the institution is better off financially compared to last year, and provides information on whether financial performance supports the strategic direction of the institution. This is one where the capitalization of investments in plant or buildings, that is, when we build a building and capitalize it on our books, that can create volatility in this particular ratio. The industry standard is 3% above inflation as measured by the Consumer Price Index. The watch level is consistently below the rate of inflation. So as you'll see, on a whole, the community college sector is above the expected level, which generally means our institutions are better off than they were compared to the previous year. The next ratio that we'll review is the net operating revenues ratio. The net operating revenue ratio indicates an operating surplus or deficit, and is similar to a profit margin. And provides information on whether an institution basically is living within their available resources and means. The industry standard is 4%, which represents amounts needed to keep pace with the growth in expenses and still to maintain an adequate reserve level. The watch level is consistently below 0%. And keep in mind that a deficit in a single year does not necessarily indicate a problem, but deficits over several years could be a cause for concern. Again, I think with all these ratios, we try to look at trends over time. And this ratio, again, tends to be pretty volatile and can be negatively impacted by things really that are out of the institution's control. There's some accounting entries that they're required to book that they really don't control and really don't require cash outlay on their part. Some of those things are, there are some new required pension accounting entries that have been in place for a couple years, depreciation expense, and then capital maintenance expenditures that are funded by capital appropriations can impact this ratio as well. But again, as you'll see from the community college sector, that they performed above the watch level for this ratio. The next one that we're going to look at is the viability ratio. And this measures the financial health by comparing expendable net assets to total long-term debt. Again, this one measures in relation to the amount of debt that's on your books, and do you have enough expendable net assets to cover that debt. And really, we won't look much at this one today. Really, our institutions have no debt to speak of. Walter State does have some debt related to a capital outlay project that they have on their campus, but in looking at their viability ratio, they are in good shape, but the sector as a whole really doesn't have a lot of debt. So we'll move on to the Consolidated Financial Index, or the CFI. This is the last measure that we'll look at. And basically, to calculate the CFI, you use the four ratios that we just previously discussed, and they're combined into a single measure for the overall financial health of the institution. And again, we track CFI over time, and this provides information on the progress an institution is making toward achieving its financial goals. But again, we still have to remember that there are things that are beyond the institution's control that can significantly impact this measure. For the CFI, the industry standard is 3.0. At this level, an institution is considered relatively financially healthy. And the watch level of a CFI is 1.0 or less. And for the community college sector, the performance is just below the expected level, which would indicate that the sector as a whole is doing pretty well. And now we'll move and take a look at the TCATs. Again, the first one we'll look at will be the primary reserve ratio. And again, as a reminder, this ratio measures how long an institution can survive on current reserve levels. The TCAT sector as a whole is above the watch level and showed improvement over the previous year. As a general rule, our TCATs, though, are normally a little thinner when it comes to reserve margins than our community colleges. The return on net assets ratio for the TCATs are performing above the expected level here. Here you can really see the impact of bringing new buildings online. You'll see the spike in 2016. That was a year where we capitalized several buildings, and then we had a drop-off. Not as many were built or constructed and capitalized in 2017, so you can really see the impact that has on these ratios. The next one that we'll take a look at is the net operating revenue ratio. The TCAT sector performed pretty much at the watch level. Again, those factors are really, some of those factors that shape this one are beyond the institution's control, again, such as the pension entries and depreciation, and can have a material impact on this particular ratio. And then for the CFI ratio for the TCATs, the performance is above the watch level for this sector. And again, this is another one where you can see the material impact, I think, caused by the capitalization of buildings. You can see that it somewhat spikes in 2016 and then drops off back in 2017. We want to, again, keep in mind that there are other factors that we look at when considering the financial health of the institution as well, not just these ratios. I mean, these are, again, our indicators. They're not absolutes, but we look at other things. We look at trends in fund balances over time to see how our institutions are doing. We see if those trends are planned or how they happened. And again, we communicate with our schools regarding those. Here's just a summary, basically, of the observations that we've just covered for each individual sector. So unless there are questions, Madam Chair, this completes my report.
Questions for Vice Chancellor Gibbs? Thank you. Well done. Thank you for the summary page at the end. That's quite helpful. Our next informational item is our annual survey of students and employers of our graduates from the Colleges of Applied Technology. Dr. Goodman is available if you have any questions, but that material was in our notebook and I'm assuming everybody read it in advance. So if we don't have any questions, we will keep moving. Once again, good results, so good work by our TCATs, and importantly, that placement rate of our graduates remains, what, 87%? Excellent. Good work, team. Vice Chancellor McCormick will now present our External Affairs report.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Regents. We have 3 informational agenda items today. These are, none of them are requiring of action. The first is statewide campus visits. The purpose of these visits was to gather campus questions, concerns, and ideas for improving our External Affairs Division efforts in campus support. I feel that we did all of this and more. My team greatly enjoyed visiting with the dedicated leaders, and many of them here in this room, and professionals that serve our students across the state. Since the recent completion of these visits, my staff is analyzing the input of each school, seeking responses to their questions and concerns, and they're tracking the trends among issues brought up by the multiple institutions. While some topics came up exclusively among the community colleges or the technical colleges, reflective of their specific needs, we were not surprised to see that the top 4 most frequently mentioned items were brought forth by a mix of community and technical colleges. These 4 areas are, number 1, the desire to see more articulation agreements between our own institutions and between our schools and those outside of the system so that students can pursue a more diverse educational experience. The second we heard, the continual need for access to updated equipment so that our students can continue to receive modern training that keeps them on track in mastering the required skills needed to successfully meet the needs of business and industry. Third is the desire to strengthen dual enrollment access through proper funding and planning so as to serve our K-12 community and keep them connected to the local higher education institutions that will continue to serve them beyond the senior year. And fourth, the most frequent comment or request we got from the tour of Tennessee was that our campuses want to have continued support from this system office to enhance their institutions both locally and statewide. In this tour of Tennessee, I wish that you all could go. Of the 40 institutions, we have seen amazing, amazing things. We have seen students or heard stories of students riding bikes to school 18 miles one way to get there. We've heard of faculty at institutions that have programs so strong that people come and park in front of their institutions during the day and go to campgrounds with their RVs to be able to come and take specific programs. We heard about that when we did a tour up at TCAT McKenzie in Paris. There are dedicated faculty, staff, and administrators across the whole state, and you as board members should be, and I know you are, highly, 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 highly proud of these folks. It's amazing. We, the board staff and External Affairs specifically, intend to support these campuses and their institutions in the efforts as we continue what we do on a daily basis at the system level. The next item that we have are the 2018 legislative priorities. As a result of the information gathered from our statewide campus visits, the 2018 legislative priority areas have been established. Number 1, of course, is to secure our formula capital outlay and equipment funding request and the extension of that TBR sunset provision as it moves through the committees and the legislature. Second, to encourage and support the expansion of the dual enrollment opportunities for all Tennessee high school students. Third is ensure the statewide campus safety and security of the TBR's 118,000 students. And 4, support the efforts to expand college access to all Tennessee high school graduates. those are our broad-based priorities for this year, and we know that you all will support us in our efforts to advocate for those. Finally, we have, this is an exciting thing to end my presentation with. Finally, we have the fundraising and grants report. Each fall, we report to the board the private fundraising results of our colleges. Last year, we added information from the statewide TCAT Foundation. This year, we've added information from TCAT Shelbyville, which has its own foundation. And this year's report also adds a new feature. We've included the amount and types of grants received in fiscal year 2017 by each college. It is our hope that this additional information will give the board a fuller picture of external resources invested in our colleges and our students. Regents, you have a copy on your desk, and we are very proud of this document. In fiscal year 2017, TBR colleges, and I'm looking at, again, this group back here, received almost $69 million through fundraising and grants. This is amazing work by our college staff. In fiscal year 2017, community colleges and technical colleges foundations raised $12.9 million, and you can see that on chart 1. Again, in fiscal year 17, Dyersburg State raised the largest amount at $2.6 million, with 5 colleges raising at least $1 million. So Karen, congratulations to you. Individual college endowments varied greatly from $58,770 at TCAT Shelbyville to Walter State at almost $11.5 million. That's on chart 2, by the way. Community colleges receive most of their donations from non-alumni individuals, corporations, foundations, and other organizations. That will be on chart 3, and on chart 4, we have the 3 largest donations to the TCAT Foundation listed. Does everyone have a copy of this, by the way, in front of you? Okay. That would be the Haas Foundation, the Hayden Family and Novartis Corporation, and the Foundation for Geriatric Education. Okay, now as we go to grants. In fiscal year 2017, the TBR system and its colleges were awarded almost $56 million in grants. Of that amount, $34.7 million went to community colleges and almost $21.2 million to technical colleges. 8 of the 13 community colleges were each awarded over $2 million in grants. Motlow Community College was awarded the largest amount at almost $5.7 million. 6 TCATs were each awarded over $1 million in grants during fiscal year 17. These include TCATs Athens, Hartsville, Hohenwald, Pulaski, Knoxville, and Memphis. The state was the largest funder of grants awarded to our institutions, followed by the federal government. I want to thank the campuses again for submitting information on these grants, never before collected by TBR. I appreciate the hard work of Ginger Hauser for creating this actual report, and to the polishing touches to the report were completed by Ms. Kim Bolivar, TBR's new graphic designer in our Marketing and Digital Strategy Department. We applaud the efforts of the colleges to be resourceful and creative in meeting their needs and supporting students. If you have any questions, I would be glad to answer them from my 3 sections. I hope that I minded your time wisely. And again, I'm so thankful to our external affairs staff and to all of our institutions for helping create these reports.
I just have one quick question.
Yes, ma'am.
In your statewide tour, did you come across as many iconic places to stop and eat as Mike Krause does in his statewide tours?
Mike, that barbecue place over in I don't know where, Matthew Gann and I were stopped by a train. I think we also were stopped at one point by a cow. We saw some of the most beautiful cotton and corn fields I've ever seen in my life. The state's beautiful, but those barbecue restaurants across the way are amazing. Thank you.
Any questions or comments for Kim? Thank you for, oh, I'm sorry, Regent Markham.
Well, I would like to comment, in all my years on the board, we have never seen these numbers, and it's wonderful. Thank you so much for putting all this together. I know it was a joint effort, and a lot of hard work has gone into this. A large collaborative effort from across the state with all the foundation support from everyone, and yes. I appreciate it very much, and I think we have some nice bragging rights now. Thank you very much.
Well put. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well put. No, and to our TCAP presidents and our community college presidents, I mean, clearly to the fourth important item that you gave Dr. McCormick and the team, you will have continued support from the system office and obviously continued support from this board. So job well done. We appreciate you all. There you go. Applaud yourself. That's right. Well done, everybody. We are moving now into our action items, and with that, Vice Chancellor Gibbs returns to go over our revised budget with us.
Thank you again, Madam Chair. Today you have before you for approval the October revised budget for fiscal year 2017-2018. If you recall, in June of 2017, this board approved the proposed budget for the system with initial budgetary operating authority for the 2017-18 fiscal year. And of course, at the time the proposed budget was prepared, there were obviously certain factors that weren't known. I mean, estimates were made on things such as fall enrollment. But the revised budget gives us an opportunity to come back and address those factors, such as the enrollment change and final state budget adjustments, as well as just updating the budget for any other budget estimates based on more current information that may be available to our institutions. As we go through these slides, we'll be reviewing select information from the budget from the October 2017-18 budget. The first thing that we will look at is the state appropriation reconciliation. And again, keep in mind as I go through these slides that we're often comparing October 2016 budget to October 2017 budget. We think that just gives us a better comparison. It's really more apples to apples with comparing the October cycles against each other. And again, if you'll look at this item, you'll see a few reconciling items that gets us from our October 2016 number of about $328 million in state appropriations down to our October 2017 number of about $329 million. If you'll notice, one of the largest reconciling items there is a non-reoccurring improvement of a little over $28 million. And if you recall, back in the 16-17 fiscal year, that was the year that we received the state appropriations for the Shared Services Initiative. So that was about $28.7 million, and that was included in the October 16-17 budget. But it being non-recurring funds is no longer included in the appropriation that we received for the 17-18 revised budget. Another large item there that stands out is the outcomes-based funding formula adjustments and salary funding that we received. That was almost $19 million. Our next slide looks at total budgeted revenues. Again, a comparison of the revised budgets, the 16-17 versus the 17-18 budgets. Again, the first line is we've just discussed the state appropriations. The other lines, as we look through those, there really weren't any material variances very much there. There was one thing that looked a little bit different, and that's down under other fees. There's a reduction there of about $1.4 million, or about 10%. And that's really related to an accounting change. Historically, when the colleges booked a bad debt expense allowance, they literally booked that as an expense, but there were some accounting changes that now require us to book that as a contra revenue, in other words, a reduction to revenue instead of an expense. So that's what you're seeing show up there. Our next slide is the unrestricted education in general expenditures by function. Again, this is unrestricted. Again, comparing 16-17 versus 17-18 fiscal year. The variance I think there that I want to just briefly touch on is in the institutional support area. It went up 10%. Normally that's something that we don't like to see go up, is the expenditures in institutional support, but there was a reason for this, and again, it's back to the shared services initiative, and these being non-recurring expenditures to get the shared services center up and going. And again, this was from the special appropriations. The other item that had a significant move was the scholarships and fellowships, changed about 36%. And part of that, again, was from an accounting change. Historically, our colleges have recorded athletic scholarships in the student services functional area, along with other athletic-related expenditures. But this year, there was a change in accounting principle that required us to start booking that in the scholarships and fellowships function. So you'll see a decline up in student services and increase down in scholarships and fellowships. And another thing that moved the scholarships and fellowships number was, I think had been mentioned earlier, Pellissippi's piloting of the Tennessee Reconnect program. There were scholarship expenses that had to be booked in relation to that, and those were booked in the scholarships and fellowships function. The next slide looks at unrestricted educational and general expenditures by natural classifications. Those being salaries, benefits, travel, operating, capital outlay. Again, comparing the two fiscal years, the number that moved the most was the operating line. And again, this is from 2 or 3 different things. Again, the shared services initiative, you're seeing that kind of flow through all of these schedules. In some of our schools, we have carryover funds from our 16-17 year. Some schools rebudget those funds in the next fiscal year, and that caused some movement there. And then again, I think the Pellissippi State Scholarship helped move this line as well. The next slide is the unrestricted and restricted fund expenditures and transfers, again comparing the two fiscal years. And there you will see about a $27 million variance in the transfer line, and we'll just skip to the next slide. I think it provides the details on the activity there. You'll see retirement of indebtedness changed about $540,000, and most of this was related to some additional outstanding debt at Walter State Community College for the Greenville expansion, and the collection of debt service fee at Columbia State for their upcoming Williamson County Center parking facility. The unexpended plant number moved about $10 million, and this is mostly related to Nashville State set aside for the North Davidson County campus in Madison. That was about $14 million for that project. Then in renewal and replacement, we see a movement of about $37 million there. And again, some of this was related to shared services. When we received the money in the 16-17 fiscal year, we transferred that money to our plant funds and held it there until we were ready for use. So that's part of the large number that you see back in 16-17. And again, I think part of it is related just to our campuses. Some of their carryover funds, they have transferred it to renewal and replacement in the plant funds for future equipment acquisition and capital outlay needs. The summary of of unrestricted funds available and applied. Again, this is basically looking at beginning fund balance to ending fund balance in this October cycle. And you'll see unrestricted beginning fund balance of about $169 million that drops to about $113 million in the ending fund balance, with about a $56 million overall decline. And again, I think if we look at this, it's mostly attributable to those institutions that I just mentioned that were transferring some of the beginning balance or some of the funds that were carried forward from the previous year to the plant funds, again, for equipment and capital outlay needs in the future. This slide contains a summary for the revised budget, and this is what you'll be acting on today. It shows the total unrestricted E&G expenditures, our restricted expenditure line, as well as auxiliaries, total transfers for a total expenditures and transfers of $1,119 million with 6,657 authorized positions. And these budget numbers, again, are just inclusive of the community colleges, the TCATs, and the system office. We still have a small responsibility for the LGI budgets, and that's included on the final slide for today. And for the LGIs, we're required to consider university budgets, and that consideration is limited, though, to those matters that are necessary to fulfill existing debt covenants, representations, agreements, and obligations under financing agreements entered into with the Tennessee State School Bond Authority. So the Tennessee Board of Regents still has responsibility for reviewing their budgets to see if they can meet their debt obligations. And according to our policy, again, the things that we look at, the university budgets by our staff has been reviewed and determined to meet the debt service obligation requirements. The university budgets have been found to be mathematically correct and internally consistent, and the universities have certified compliance with required representations, and except as noted, no judgments have been made regarding university budgets. The university budgets are recommended for approval as being in compliance with the above TBR policy. And again, I think that's what the chart shows us there, that we have reviewed the certified compliance, that they've certified compliance with the required representations. And as you can see from the fiscal year 2017-18 revised budget column, what they're required to do there, they're required to have 2 times the debt service amount. So their unrestricted revenue should be 2 times their annual debt service requirement, and you can see they far exceed that in every case. So this is before you for approval as well today, and that completes my report.
Well done. This will require a roll call vote. Regent Duckett, as chair of the Finance Committee, do you want to move approval?
Yes, Madam Chair. Let me move approval of the FY 2017-18 October revised budget as presented by Vice Chancellor Gibbs, which also acknowledges that the university budgets are in compliance with state obligations that we are to oversee.
Thank you. A second, please. Second. Regent Varlin, thank you. Any discussion? Mary, would you call the roll for our approval on the revised budget?
Regent Apple.
Aye.
Regent Autry.
Aye.
Regent Duckett.
Aye.
Regent Hatch.
Aye.
Regent Markham.
Aye.
Regent Mitchell.
Aye.
Regent Prescott.
Aye.
Regent Reynolds.
Aye.
Regent Templeton.
Aye.
Regent Varlin.
Aye.
Regent White.
Aye.
It carries unanimously.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Vice Chancellor Gibbs. Very good job on the explanation. We'd now like to call on our Executive Vice Chancellor, Russ Deaton, and Wendy Thompson, Vice Chancellor Thompson, who are going to discuss some revisions to our strategic plan.
Great. Thank you, Vice Chair Reynolds, Dr. Tidings, members of the board. 2 years ago, this body adopted a strategic plan for 2015-2025, centered around 4 key priorities: student access, student success, quality, and then the 4th one was resourcefulness and efficiencies. Well, the events of the next 2 years, of course, have prompted us to reflect on that strategic plan, and particularly with the Focus Act, to ensure that it is indeed still the direction that this body wants to go. So at Dr. Tidings' request, the leadership team, over the course of, I guess, 4 or 5 different strategy sessions, spent several hours each time, basically with a blank slate, and asked ourselves, what is still the mission of this body? What is our identity? What are our values? What strengths and weaknesses do we bring to the challenges that are facing us now in a post-focus world? And we began to just kick those ideas around. And the sum total of those conversations are really what is presented for you here today for your action. And they really are in 2 buckets that I'll describe for you, and this is in your materials. The first is essentially reaffirming the direction that this body took in 2015. Connected that plan to, of course, the Drive to 55, and affirming those 4 priorities, but importantly adding a 5th one. And that 5th one is essentially partnerships, promotion, and advocacy. And there's really no better example that I could give you other than what we heard this morning, Vice Chair Reynolds, with Dr. Cedric's presentation on eCampus, which essentially exists because of the partnerships between LGIs, the TCATs, and our community colleges. And then the second key bucket was what I would describe as wordsmithing the current core 4 elements and bringing them a little more up to date with the vision of Dr. Tidings and the vision of this board to include both student success and workforce training, workforce development, getting more language that is representative of that impulse and function of the board. This, after extensive, again, conversations among leadership team, this was discussed with the presidents at their retreat in November, getting their feedback, incorporating it in here as well. And again, it's presented for you here today for action. I'd like to ask Wendy to talk about, too, if this were approved today, what we would then do next, because this, of course, is essentially sort of a philosophical document, and it is manifested quite a bit in the daily workings of the board, and I'll ask her to describe some of that for you.
Thank you, Russ. So whenever we're trying to affect big change or do big things, we know, if you've seen me here before, we usually ask 4 questions. What are we trying to do? How are we trying to do it? How will we know if we're being successful? And 4th, which we haven't had to do, is what do you do if you get off track? So we, as Russ said, we do know what we're trying to do. We're trying to fulfill our part of Drive to 55 through student success and workforce development. These priorities set out how we're trying to do it. So should you approve them, the next step would be for the system office working with our presidents to decide how we will measure our success. So that will be to develop a set of metrics and a set of key strategies that we think will get us to these priorities. So that would be the next step.
Questions for Wendy and Russ? And I know everybody's had a chance to read this and peruse the language a little bit. If not, we'll need a voice vote on this, but I need a motion to approve our revised strategic plan priorities. Thank you, Regent Prescott. Regent Hatch, a second. Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Thank you both very much. Well done. The next item that is listed as an action item was in fact a transmittal just as a read ahead, and that was approval of some program terminations and modifications and new programs at our TCATs. You might note in your informational item that none of this in fact required action by the board, but it certainly was there for your information. So if you have no questions for Dr. Schulte, we will forge ahead. All right? Thank you all. We have 6 policies before us today, and Mary will give a very brief summary on each. We do need to take each individually as an action item, as I understand it. And you'll recall you've seen these in your notebooks, and she sent these home with us as a homework assignment when we were together in November. So with that, Mary, let's pick up on the first policy change, and that's the warranty.
Right, and the policy is just the implementing mechanism for the warranty program that you've heard discussed earlier today and at previous meetings. So if there are no questions about the policy, which you've got the precise text in your materials, I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any. If you don't, I would recommend its approval by the board.
Thank you. Any discussion, questions? A motion to approve. Thank you, Regent Apple. A second. Regent Markham, thank you so much. Any further discussion? We simply need a voice vote to approve the policy surrounding the warranty of the competency of our graduates in technical programs.
Before
Mary.
we vote, we talked about the effective date. The warranty would be, so is the motion to make the program effective for which group of students? Entering in fall of 2018.
Okay.
Just wanted to make sure that that was clear in the record, that it beginning with students entering in the fall of 2018.
Okay.
So
that having been said, if there are no further questions or comments, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you very much. So we'll look forward to hearing more on the warranty as we roll it out next year. That's exciting. All right, Mary.
So the next policy is a revision and moving what is the existing P085, which is Workplace Violence Prevention Guideline, into a policy on prevention of workplace violence. And part of this was prompted by last year's passage of the Healthy Workplace Act by the Tennessee General Assembly. This policy is consistent with the requirements of that act. And I recommend its approval if you don't have any questions.
If there are no questions, we need a motion to approve. Thank you, Regent Varlin. A second. Regent Templeton, thank you so much. Any discussion? If not, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Freedom of speech and expression we have a new policy.
This is a new policy, and it's the result of an act that was passed by the General Assembly last year, the Campus Free Speech Protection Act, and the policy is consistent with the requirements of the act. If there aren't any questions, I recommend its passage.
Questions? Motion to approve. Thank you, Regent Prescott. Second. Regent Mitchell, thank you very much. Any discussion? Hearing none, we will now approve the new policy on freedom of speech and expression. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Mary?
The next one is the new policy on public records request. Again, this was prompted by some changes in the state law on public records requests. This policy is consistent with the requirements of the state law, and if you don't have any questions, I recommend its approval.
So moved.
Thank you, Regent Varlin. A second. Regent Apple, thank you very much. Any discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much. Now, the next one is a rule change, if I understand it correctly.
Okay. So, in the previous session of the General Assembly, they passed a statute that allowed institutions of higher education to adopt policies that would allow prohibiting smoking on campuses, which is broader than the pre-existing law, which really only authorized you to prohibit it in spaces, enclosed spaces. And so we wanted to allow our institutions to do that, so we have looked at the existing policies on smoking and alcohol, which we have two, and they are both address smoking and alcohol. So what this rule controls alcohol. So we're separating smoking and alcohol, so we're going to repeal the existing smoking and alcohol policies and replace them with a policy on alcohol, a policy on smoking, and because we have a rule on alcohol in the student rules, we're changing the rule to address an issue that really nobody had ever thought about before. If you're of legal drinking age, you're a student, especially since our campuses have a lot of older adults. If you have stopped at the store on the way home and you have an alcoholic beverage that you're legally allowed to have in your car, under our current rules, that would be a violation of the disciplinary code, even if you never removed it from the car. And so this change to this student rule recognizes that those people who are of legal drinking age have the right to possess those things in their car. They can't open them, they can't remove them from the car, but it would protect them from having a disciplinary violation. So that's what we're taking up with the rule, is changing making that revision to the rule, and that, because it's a rule, it requires a roll call vote. I recommend its approval, the revision's approval.
Any questions for Mary? Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Thank you, Regent Varlin. A second? I'm sorry, I missed the second. Oh, thank you, Regent Autry. I missed that almost. Any further discussion? If not, Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Regent Apple.
Aye.
Regent Autry.
Aye.
Regent Duckett.
Aye.
Regent Hatch.
Aye.
Regent Markham.
Aye.
Regent Mitchell.
Aye.
Regent Prescott.
Aye.
Regent Reynolds.
Aye.
Regent Templeton.
Aye.
Regent Varlin.
Aye.
Regent White.
Aye.
Thank you.
And finally,
Okay, so
a policy.
now
another
we're to the
change.
policy on alcoholic beverages and smoking. So what the motion would be is to repeal the existing policies on smoking and alcoholic beverages and replace them with the two policies that are in your packet, one on smoking and one on alcoholic beverages. If you don't have any questions about the policies, I recommend their approval.
Any questions? If not, we need a motion to repeal the existing policies and replace them with the changes
As
presented.
proposed.
Thank you. Motion to approve? Thank you, Regent Hatch. Second? Regent Markham, thank you. Any further discussion?
This is just a voice vote.
Thank you. All in favor? Opposed? Very well. Thank you, Mary, for taking us through those succinctly. Chancellor, I believe I now turn it back to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The draft criteria for the next president of TCAT Murfreesboro was included in the board meeting materials you received last week. The committee members and the chair of the committee will be announced in the near future. Madam Chair, unless there are any changes, I respectfully ask approval of the proposed criteria for the next president at TCAT Murfreesboro.
Any changes or questions for the Chancellor? Hearing none, we need a motion to approve. Thank you. Commissioner Templeton, second. Regent Apple, thank you very much. Any discussion? If not, all in favor to approve the criteria for the next president at TCAT Murfreesboro, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you very much. Chancellor?
Thank you. The draft criteria for the next president of TCAT New Bern was included again in your board materials. The committee members and chair of the committee will be announced in the near future. Madam Chair, again, unless there are any changes, I respectfully ask approval of the proposed criteria for the next president of TCAT New Bern.
Any questions for the Chancellor? If not, a motion to approve. Thank you, Regent Prescott. A second. Thank you, Regent Autry. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of approving the criteria for the presidency at TCAT New Bern, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Chancellor?
Yes, Chattanooga State is requesting approval to name the Health Science Center the Erlanger Health Science Center in recognition of Erlanger Hospital's long-standing partnership with the college. Erlanger's generosity to the Chattanooga State Foundation and the hospital's outstanding achievement. This relationship goes back to the mid-1980s. Erlanger supports the college in a variety of ways by providing students quality clinical rotations, and Erlanger's employees serve in numerous leadership capacities on campus. Erlanger has a history of strong leadership commitment to the Chattanooga State Foundation. The hospital has established 2 nursing chairs of excellence and the Baroness Erlanger Scholarship, which has gone from 2012 to 2017. Erlanger's donations totaled over $467,000, supporting 44 nursing students, and Erlanger is the single largest contributor to the Chattanooga State Foundation to date. Investing in faculty excellence is critical for the college, and the Erlanger partnership makes this possible by honoring and providing support to an outstanding nursing educator and scholar each of the past 5 years. The naming committee met on October 24, 2017, and voted unanimously to approve this naming. This request is in compliance with TBR naming buildings and facilities and building plaques policy 4020501. I am honored to request approval for naming the Health Science Center at Chattanooga State Community College the Erlanger Health Science Center.
Very good. Any questions? We need a motion to approve. Thank you, Regent Varlin. A second? Thank you, Regent Markham. Any discussion? All in favor of naming the Health Science Center at Chattanooga State Community College in honor of Erlanger, please signify so by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. President Ashford, would you like to come forward and make some comments? This has been a long partnership with Erlanger in Chattanooga State, so it's a big day.
It is indeed a big day, and I thank you so much, Madam Chair, and all the regents, and of course, Dr. Tidings. It was Dr. Tidings who started this gift that led to the naming today, and it's a real privilege to be here with you today and express my appreciation to all of you for your approval to name our Health Sciences Center the Erlanger Health Sciences Center. Thank you so much. I'd also like to thank the Chattanooga State Health Science Center Building Naming Committee, which was made up of primarily health sciences faculty and staff and students, who brought us here today with their recommendation. And we're honored to name our beautiful two-story, 99,000 square foot building located at the entrance to our main campus after this community champion for nursing and allied health education in our service area. To date, Erlanger Health System has committed nearly $2 million to the Chattanooga State Foundation, and we're so grateful to them for that. The loyalty and leadership demonstrated by Erlanger began in the 1980s, as Dr. Tidings mentioned. At that time, Chattanooga State began educating nurses and an array of health sciences professionals in what is the largest academic division on our campus. And so today I'm very proud that our allied health graduates have a 96% job placement rate. And you might also like to know that Chattanooga State's nursing graduates are top performers, earning a 100% pass rate on the National Council Licensure Examination from a class of more than 100 students graduating this past spring. That's just amazing. So thanks to the talented team of faculty, outstanding education and training takes place inside the walls of our soon-to-be dedicated Erlanger Health Science Center. And I will look forward to inviting you all to our campus in 2018 when we will host the dedication ceremony to honor Erlanger Health System for loyal and dynamic partnerships with us that has impacted the success of many students in the past and certainly will continue to do so in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. That's great. Convey our thanks to the folks at Erlanger, and as everybody in this room knows, a 100% pass rate on the nursing exam is no small achievement. That's excellent.
Absolutely.
That is excellent. And we will look forward to another big day in Chattanooga for the actual building dedication. That's exciting. We will now move to the consideration of a resolution, two actually, resolutions of appreciation for our two retiring presidents that the Chancellor mentioned earlier. And to honor President George Van Allen, I will call on Regent Hatch.
Thank you, Chair Reynolds. Resolution of appreciation for the service of Dr. George Van Allen to the Tennessee Board of Regents. Whereas Dr. George Van Allen graduated from high school in New York after years of schooling in Germany, and whereas he attended college in North Carolina, receiving bachelor's and master's degree from Appalachian State University and his doctorate from North Carolina State University. And whereas Dr. Van Allen served as president of Neosho County Community College in Kansas from 1988 to 1992 and significantly improved the college's financial position and student enrollment base. And whereas he joined Nashville State Technical Institute as president in 1992, tasked to end years of deficit spending and improve a poor enrollment trend. And whereas the growth of Nashville State Tech was a negative 1.8% for the decade preceding his arrival and a positive 45% during the decade after his arrival, with enrollment peaking at 10,162, and thus assuring the financial health of the college. And whereas during President Van Allen's tenure, the Technical Institute moved to a community college standing in 2002 when the Tennessee General Assembly and the governor expanded the mission of Nashville State. And whereas mission and program expansions allowed for renovated and new facilities at the main campus and the development of off-campus sites in Waverly, Cookeville, Clarksville, Donaldson, Antioch, and the funding for a campus under development in Madison. And whereas during his tenure at the college, Many new programs were introduced, including its first dual enrollment program, which led to Tennessee's first middle college, the creation of a foundation to support the college, new academic programs such as police science, culinary science, and nursing. And whereas Dr. Van Allen partnered with the Tennessee Department of Corrections to establish the first college program for inmates in the state since the turn of the century, and whereas he strived to maintain high academic standards to successfully master the numerous criteria for program and institutional accreditation, now therefore be it resolved that the Tennessee Board of Regents expresses its sincere appreciation to Dr. George Van Allen for his outstanding contributions and leadership to the system and wishes him the very best in his retirement.
Thank you, Regent Hatch. This calls for a motion to approve. Regent Hatch?
So moved.
Thank you. A second? Thank you, Regent Prescott. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the resolution to honor Dr. Van Allen, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you very much. He could not be with us today, but as the last line of the resolution says, we certainly wish him all the best in his retirement. And I got slightly out of order, for which I apologize, but we will now hear from Regent Prescott as we consider a resolution of appreciation for President Donna Hastings.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Whereas Miss Donna Hastings is a native of Tatumville, Tennessee, and graduated with a Bachelor of Science degree in Business Administration with an emphasis in accounting from the University of Tennessee at Martin, and received her Master of Arts degree in Liberal Studies from the University of Memphis in 2009. And whereas she was employed at the Newbern Area Vocational School as an office occupations instructor from 1984 to 1986, owned and operated an accounting practice for 11 years, was employed as plant controller at Martha White Foods in Jackson, Tennessee from 1991 to 1993, was employed as plant controller at Alumax Engineered Metal Processes in Jackson, Tennessee from 1993 to 1997, worked as an instructor at the Tennessee Technology Center, Jackson from 1997 to 2008, served as the Assistant Director at the Tennessee Technology Center at Newbern from 2008 to 2013, and served as the President of Tennessee College of Applied Technology, Newbern from January 2013 until December 2017. And whereas she has served in numerous leadership roles with the Tennessee Board of Regents, to include serving on the Tennessee College of Applied Technology Executive Directors Subcouncil from 2013 to 2015, participating in the 2008 Tennessee College of Applied Technology Leadership Program, serving on the Tennessee Board of Regents Transitions Committee in 2017, and serving on the Tennessee Board of Regents Business Affairs Subcouncil in 2017. Whereas she was Chamber of Commerce board member in Dyersburg, Dyer County from 2013 to 2017, a member of the American Technical Education Association, a member of Women in Higher Education in Tennessee in 2013, a guiding team member and treasurer of the Northwest Tennessee Reconnect in 2016-2017, a Board of Directors member for the United Way from 2013 to 2017, and a Rotary Club member in Newbern, Tennessee from 2013 to 2015. And whereas her leadership was key to the offering of certified production technician classes in 6 area high schools in 2016-17, served on the West Tennessee Consortia, which received $1 million in the Labor Education Alignment Program grant funds used to purchase machine tool technology equipment in Dyersburg, Tennessee, implemented an evening weekend practical nursing program in 2015, implemented a cosmetology program in 2015, implemented an injection molding robotics program in 2014, and governor's grant funding, implemented a CDL truck driving program in 2015,
implemented a diesel-powered equipment program with governor's grant funding in 2016, began dual enrollment opportunities in welding technology at Dyersburg High School, Dyer County High School, Lay County High School, and Obion County High School, and implemented a certified nursing assistant program at Lay County High School. Whereas she shall be missed by fellow colleagues, faculty, staff, students, and community leaders and alumni of Tennessee College of Applied Technology, New Bern. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Tennessee Board of Regents expresses its sincere appreciation to Ms. Donna Hastings for her outstanding contributions and leadership to the system and wishes the very best to her in her retirement. Madam Vice Chair, I move the approval of this resolution.
Thank you. Regent Prescott, a second, please. Second, Regent Autry. Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor of the resolution, the motion to approve, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much. And once again, to President Hastings, who could not be here today, all the best and thank you for your service. Chancellor, I believe I turn it back to you at this point.
Yes, Madam Chair. Well, I do have a special point of privilege today to ask for consideration. At a special call meeting of the Personnel and Compensation Committee, Dr. Randy Schulte was appointed as Interim Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs on April 27, 2017. Dr. Heidi Lemming was appointed as Interim Vice Chancellor for Student Success at the Personnel and Compensation Committee meeting on June 22, 2017. Both individuals have served this system and this state at great heights. And so it is at this time that I am asking to please remove the interim title from both of their names and to appoint them as Vice Chancellor for Student Success, Dr. Heidi Lemming, and as Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs, Dr. Randy Schulte.
Excellent recommendation. A motion to approve. So moved. Thank you, Regent Varland. Second, Regent Duckett. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Would they please stand and let us recognize you for your
Congratulations, you two, and thank you. So this is a talented team, and we are honored to have you all on board. We have one more appointment approval to handle today, and this is one that the Chancellor and I bring to you jointly. Our bylaws, of course, require that that the board elects the secretary, and we are proposing today a very slight governance change. Mary Moody, who is so ably serves as our general counsel and as our secretary, has graciously agreed to remain at this table as our general counsel, whose counsel we need each and every day. Sanja Mason has served ably as assistant board secretary working with Mary. Our proposal to you today is now, with Sanja being a direct report to the President, that we name Sanja today as the board secretary, obviously working in consultation with Mary on a daily basis on important matters that come before the board. That is our recommendation, and we would be grateful for a motion to approve. Thank you, Regent Markham. A second. Regent Duckett, thank you very much. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? So, Sanja, congratulations. So now we will have two able folks at the table with us, and that's Mary and Sanja working closely together, and both take such good care of this board. Chancellor, any announcements or comments before we close today?
I would like to thank Volunteer State for their hospitality, for all that you did to prepare for us. We know that that is never easy, and you did it in wonderful speed and in wonderful fashion. So thank you very much, President Faulkner, for that.
Absolutely. Thank you, President Faulkner. We are indeed very grateful. I have 2 or 3 quick housekeeping things. The first is your questionnaire, which is before you to fill out and give to Sanja before you leave today. The second is to thank Regent White, who was away on business, but for carving out the time to join us by phone. And it also occurs to me that I think Regent Hatch might have dropped a little something on the table for everyone as a takeaway today. Thank you, sir. That was very thoughtful. Any further announcements or comments from the board? It's been a productive meeting, and a good day together. And with that, let's wish everyone a very safe and happy holiday season, and we will get back to work in 2018. Thank you all very much. We are adjourned.